12. Animals and UFOs. In this chapter we will consider the effect of UFOs on animals. This was not one of the items listed by Captain Mackay in his Flying Saucer Review article, but we feel it should be included in this section of the book on the paranormal aspect of the UFOs. We have already touched upon animal behavior in the vicinity of UFOs, in an earlier chapter when describing the odd reactions of Mr. Fitzgerald's sheep and Mr. Leslie's steers. The most comprehensive collection of cases in this category has recently appeared in a series of articles called A New FSR Catalog by Gordon Creighton in Flying Saucer Review. The amount of reading and research needed to collect over 200 cases of this nature must have been tremendous. Mr. Creighton has rendered ufology a signal service with this fine piece of work. The catalog starts with an incident from the reign of Alexander the Great, in which two strange craft dived repeatedly at his army, causing the elephants and horses to panic. Although many of the cases in the catalog may well have a bearing on the paranormal aspect, some may not do so. Indeed, the writer of the catalog is obviously well aware of this point. In his introduction he states that many of the incidents quoted, involving panic on the part of animals, may be due to some other cause. The panicking of the elephants and horses belonging to Alexander's army was not necessarily caused because the two diving craft emanated from an alien dimension. If two modern, military jet fighter aircraft were to repeatedly dive over an army containing elephants and horses today, then no doubt a similar stampede among the animals would result. However, when we take all the 200 or so cases listed in the catalog, there is a distinct a priori case for paranormal influences being involved. When modem aircraft pass over fields where cattle and sheep are grazing, there is no particular disturbance. The animals go on nibbling the pasture or continue whatever they were doing, completely unruffled. On the other hand, when UFOs appear in their vicinity, the animals exhibit extreme alarm and fright. It could be argued that the animals are now used to modern aircraft. The point is well taken. However, there are many different types of aircraft in the skies: small private aeroplanes, great airliners, military jet fighters, helicopters, and finally, balloons and gliders. The variety is enormous. Occasionally, new types of aircraft are seen. None of these seem to unduly worry the animals. If the UFOs were simply plainly extraterrestrial, that is, from other planets in our physical universe, then their craft would surely not cause such concern to the animals, who after all, are used to seeing a large variety of aircraft in the skies. The implications to be got from the collected cases in Creighton's catalog are that the animals become genuinely alarmed when UFOs appear, for one good solid reason. They instinctively know that the UFOs are alien, in the sense that the substance of the ships and the occupants comes from another dimension to our own. Not only out of this world, but out of our space-time continuum. It is well known that animals are far more psychic than the average human being. Cats and dogs are famed for this sixth sense. Creighton quotes the case of a dog from Amy Michel's book. This is case number 34. Courubel, France, 10:30 p.m., September 10, 1954. Attention of Marius D. Wilde was attracted by the howling of his dog outside. Howling enough to awaken the dead. When he opened the door, the dog came crawling towards him in abject terror. UFOs and creatures were then encountered by him outside the house. Another case involving dogs is number 38 in the catalogue Poncy-sur-Lignon, France, 8 p.m., October 2, 1954. Madame Guénette was milking her cows in the byre, when her dogs, which usually stayed near her while she milked, rushed out towards the woods, baying. She followed, and saw a vast illuminated cigar craft, flying low. The source of this case is also Michel's book. The same year 1954, which was a UFO flap one in France, included this case involving cows. Case number 40. Bauqui, Calvados, France. Dawn, October 11, 1954. A Normandy farmer was on his way across the field to milk his cow. With two other witnesses, he watched a huge red elongated object, brightly illuminated, sweep towards them at treetop height. The terrified cows in the various fields scattered in all directions, their bells jangling wildly. When the UFO had vanished and the farmer had caught his cow, neither he nor the other farmers could coax a drop of milk out of her, and she gave none until the morning of the following day. The source of this case is also Michelle's book, page 159. The next case, number 65 in the catalog, is well recalled, as at the time I was editor of Flying Saucer Review, and corresponded with Commander J. Wild in Ghana about the occurrence. Here it is. Kata, near Ghana. Nights of 8th, 9th and 10th in April, 1958. Commander Wild, at that time acting as area investigator in Ghana for Flying Saucer Review, was awakened at 3:30 a.m. on April 9 by the loud barking of dogs, quacking of ducks, and general pandemonium among all animals and birds. He then noticed a bright light which rose up into the sky from the sea, with a sort of bobbing motion. He watched the light for 1 hour, and was able to establish that it was the cause of the great excitement among animals and birds. The same thing occurred again at 3:30 a.m. on April 10, the alarm again being given by the dogs and ducks. The source was Flying Saucer Review, September and October 1958, page 6. The uncanny influence that UFOs seem to have over both the animal and bird kingdoms, whenever they make an appearance, is well exemplified in the following incident. Case number 67. Rio Pardo, Mato Grosso, Brazil. June, 1959. 3 men were hunting crocodiles at night in a boat on this river. Suddenly, a large circular UFO appeared, halted over the opposite bank, protruded a long tube in their direction from the center of its under portion, and they felt that they were being scrutinized. The feature which unnerved most of all, however, was the awful, uncanny silence which suddenly descended on the tropical forest, usually so loud with varied forms of life even at night. Not a cicada was to be heard while the experience lasted, all sounds seeming to be blotted out, as if by a curtain. Flying Saucer Review, July and August, 1967, page 6. In an earlier chapter we covered the Barney Hill abduction by UFO entities. Another aspect of this case involving their dog is included in Creighton's catalog. Case number 72. New Hampshire, USA. Night of September 19, 1961. Their dachshund, Delcy, was in the car. The various references to the dog in the course of the hypnosis sessions indicate that the animal had become very disturbed as soon as the UFO appeared in the sky. They at first had interpreted this as simply meaning that the dog needed to be put out for a run, but the hypnosis now showed that this was not so and that the dog's condition had grown considerably worse. By the time that they were flagged down by the party of beings from the landed UFO, the dog was lying in a tight tense ball under the seat, trembling violently. When they returned after their experience with the entities, they found the dog still cowering there in the same condition. Source: John Fuller's The Interrupted Journey, pages 6, 12, 93, 123, 136, and 178. Here is an interesting Australian case. Case number 75. Mo, Australia, 7 a.m., February 15, 1963. Farmer Charles Brew and his son Trevor were in the dairy when a thick gray disc about 25 feet wide, with protrusions and a dome on top, came shooting straight down towards the farm and to a height of only 75 or 100 feet, during rain. It threw all the animals into a panic. Horses reared up and cows turned somersaults. Many of the cattle broke out and had to be rounded up. All were affected for some days, and would not re-enter the paddock over which the UFO had hovered briefly. The sound made by the UFO was a whistling, like the whistling of a turbine. Flying Saucer Review, May and June, 1963, page 63. This was one of the cases presented by Dr. James MacDonald on March 12, 1968, before the symposium of the Canadian Aeronautical and Space Institute in Montreal. Our next case shows a distinct connection with psychic phenomena and is worthy of inclusion here. Case number 76. Boskloof, Cape Province, South Africa. April and May, 1963. An outbreak of UFO and poltergeist phenomena kept the small farming community of Boskloof, near Clanwilliam, in an uproar. There were many reports of herds of cattle being frightened by red glowing lights, of dogs fleeing in terror from strange noises, appearances of ghostly figures, falling stones, a typical poltergeist phenomenon, etc. Flying Saucer Review, July and August, 1963, page 27, Flying Saucer Scare in the Cape. The following report is loaded with poltergeist overtones and comes from the quiet, sleepy town of Warminster, Wiltshire, England, the scene of much UFO activity. Case number 85. Warminster, England, 6:12 a.m., December 25, 1964, and on subsequent dates. Among the numerous UFO phenomena or poltergeist-type phenomena reported from Warminster and vicinity, it may be noted that, at or near the outset, at just after 6 a.m. on Christmas Day, a young married couple claimed that they were awakened by the frantic barking and whimpering of their dog in the garden outside. Josie, their daughter, went to investigate, and found the dog lying in a corner of the woodshed, trembling and whimpering. Just as Josie was about to re-enter the house, she experienced, as it were from the air right overhead, the terrifying whining, crackling, rasping, droning, shattering phenomenon which later became known throughout the world as the Warminster Thing. At around the same period there also occurred a case in which a flock of pigeons allegedly fell dead near Warminster, struck down by this mysterious force, rigor mortis supervening in the bodies almost at once. The same informant claimed that on yet another occasion large numbers of dead field mice had been found on the ground just after the passage overhead of the thing, their bodies riddled with tiny holes. Flying Saucer Review, July to August, 1965, page 3. The Warminster Phenomenon. See also various Warminster press reports, 1964 through 65. There is a saying that enough is as good as a feast, and we will content ourselves with just 2 more cases from Gordon Creighton's collection. Case number 99. Kensington, New Hampshire, USA. Night of September 3, 1965. The famous Muscarello case. Dogs howled frantically and horses inside a barn whinnied and kicked madly at their stalls, as a large red UFO was flying overhead, very low. The horses being inside the building, will certainly not have been able to see the UFO. John Fuller, Incident at Exeter, Chapter 1. Case number 122. Haynesville, Louisiana, USA. 8:15 p.m., December 30, 1966. An American nuclear physicist was driving southwards with his family. The weather was overcast and it was raining. At a point just before they reached Haynesville they saw, stationary in the forest, either just before the treetops or at ground level, a pulsating dome of light which alternated between a dim red and a bright orange. At one moment its luminosity suddenly became far brighter than the car's headlights, and awoke the scientist's 2 children who had been asleep on the back seats. The scientist, a professor of physics as well as a nuclear researcher, made some rapid calculations of the amount of energy represented by the light, and was so impressed that he returned to the area next day with a scintillometer, and was able to determine the position of the light as having been about 1 mile from his car at the nearest point. Then, while walking in the forest, he noted that for a considerable distance around the landing site, all animal life appeared to have utterly vanished. There were no squirrels, no birds, not even any insects, and as a keen hunter he was himself familiar with the abundant Louisiana fauna. Finally, on inquiring among local people who had also seen the light, he made the startling discovery that important losses of cattle had occurred that same night. He also detected traces of burns on the ground. He reported the matter to both the U.S. Air Force and the Condon Commission at the University of Colorado. Jacques Vallée, Passport to Magonia, pages 45 and 338. In concluding this chapter, one would like to make the following observations. Domestic animals, not cats and dogs, should really be afraid of us, because, as I have pointed out earlier, they usually end up as steaks and shoulders of lamb for our tables. Probably, when grazing placidly in the fields they have no inkling of their ultimate fate. This, then, makes it all the more interesting that they should show such fright when a UFO is in the vicinity. They seem to know instinctively that UFOs are something different, something not basically physical, as we know it, from the variety of aircraft usually to be seen in our skies. There is another aspect that should be taken into account when studying the effects of UFOs on animals. The spectrum of human hearing extends from 20 cycles to 15,000 cycles per second. It is a well-known fact that animals can hear sounds beyond both ends of the spectrum of human hearing. It could be that when a UFO is hovering or moving slowly overhead that the animals can hear the sound to such an unbearable degree that it causes them to go all taut, as in the case of Barney Hill's dog Delcy. You will recall that the poor creature rolled up into a terrified, tense ball. Then, when the UFO moves off suddenly at ultrasonic speed, that is with a sound so high-pitched as to be beyond the range of human hearing, but still within that of the animals, the effect on the latter could be devastating. Therefore, I suggest that a good deal of the fright experienced by the animal world could be due to the terrible sounds at both ends of the sound spectrum. It seems to me that both subsonics and ultrasonics play a large part in the effect of UFOs on animals. This does not invalidate the concept that some of the UFOs come from invisible universes. The two ideas are possibly interrelated.